Um, let's get into it. Who is John Grace?
John Grace, for the most part, is a Ugandan non-binary transgender, and is just out there to make a world a better place. I think that would be the best description.
What does a world as a better place look like? What does that mean? What's wrong with the world as it is now?
The world right now is lacking a lot of dignity and respect for people like me, people like us. And I think each time that we wake up to that reality that we still have a lot of work to do, despite, of course, making progress.
So a world that has dignity for you looks how?
One, of course, we have the love and tolerance aspect from it, beginning from the family. I think the current world has a family-rooted problem of phobia. Be transphobia, homophobia, any kind of phobia is really deep-rooted in the family. So that would be one place to start from. The other would be, of course, on the general society level. I think if we are able to raise more awareness out there and people are able to just know that we exist, we are not being paid or we're not being recruited and all this misinformation out there, I think that kind of world of love and tolerance, that's how I envision it.
You speak about family, and I'd like to know about you growing up. What was that like for you?
Growing up, I was an only born of two biological parents, my mom and dad. And once I was born, they ended up separating. And so I grew up for the most part with my mom. I slept in the same bed with my mom for about 8 years, so you can imagine the kind of bond that we have with her. But currently, things are quite different. Family rejection and discrimination is not any different for me. My mom essentially worries that I'm going to somehow one day turn into salt, as per the Bible. And then my dad just told me to just go back home once I am straight. So I don't think that is also soon enough. But I think I've definitely had it less bitter compared to the kind of stories that I tend to hear from the clients that we deal with. One told me, the dad told them, I'd rather have a rapist for a son than for a gay son. So you can imagine what that looks like for the family out there.
I'm very interested around family, still continuing. Um, the dynamics that you grew up in, an only child, close with your mom. Do you feel like navigating love from that kind of background? I'd love to know how that has been for you, finding love, finding family.
My family has had religion as some kind of backbone to it. So I was able to at least understand love, the core definition of love from the two basic commandments, love your neighbor and then you love God. And so being a divisive issue, this was never really a divisive issue. I've always been gay, it's just not something that I front because we tend to get defined by our sexual orientation and gender identity. And for the most part, I've tried to let them know that I'm still here and I'm also willing to make some kind of compromise because I also understand where they're coming from. It could be a place of ignorance, it could be a place of religion or culture, and somehow compromise, I think, is definitely going to be part of how we make progress. And it's just the question of how much compromise, because of course there are going to be minimum requirements. You cannot take away someone's dignity or respect in the name of compromising for family love. I think we're all God's children. God loves us. And we also love actually our family. I think families that reject us tend to think that we hate them, but we don't. All we are saying is, here we are, we exist, and we're ready to just move along because, again, as I said, this is not supposed to be a divisive issue. It's actually supposed to be something that unifies us as a family, as we're supposed to be. We're a diverse family, and we cannot all be monolithic at the end of the day. Yeah.
Tell me about finding love now that you're older, as the kind of person that you say you are. How's that been? How's that journey?
My definition of love, again, involves tolerance. So I think I've found a fair number of people that love me. Our society is heavily obsessed with this monogamy arrangement of love, and I think it's possible to actually love more than one person, and more than one person can actually love you. So for my challenges, I think they're not much different. If I wanted to cross the street while holding the hand of the person that I love, I've not been able to do that. And sometimes I've been interpreting that as some kind of failure to express love. So I think it has been filled with bittersweet moments. I've been able to get engaged, for example, low-key. And the current environment, you know what that looks like. Even just being able to put it out there somehow already be criminalized because, again, I've broken one of the man-made commandments for us, for who we are. So I think love, for the most part, for my case, has been polyamorous in nature.
Congratulations on your engagement.
Well, there are multiple, so that's also progress.
Multiple engagements.
I think we need to normalize being polyamorous. I think most issues or challenges tend to arise from always expecting this one person to have it all. And so the reality is we cannot really have it all, but if you can get part A and part B from different people, so be it.
I'll ask you a very out-of-pocket question. If you were an animal, what animal would you be? And why?
Definitely not a snake. But I think I would be an eagle.
Why?
There's this aerial view that eagles tend to have when they're flying over. And I feel being where I am, there are people who will just always know that there's someone out there who's watching them. And for human rights defenders like us, we tend not to be watched over. So it's rare to have an eagle over an eagle. I think that would probably be why I prefer to be an eagle. Just being able to watch over people, even though someone is watching over me who you're presuming is God.
Okay, so you talk about your work a lot and the things that you're saying. Is there anything from your life? How long have you been doing this kind of work?
It's now about since 2016, so that's probably about 8 years. I was part of the people or team that founded Let's Walk Uganda, and in 2020, I was able to move on into the larger consortium for shelters under the Uganda Minority Shelters Consortium. And I think the work itself is really challenging. For the most part, I think the work is doable, but the resources are not able to match. We're talking about a 10% population, which is about 4 million Ugandans out there that are in need of different protection services, but we cannot really provide them all. So I think we've made a fair amount of progress. We've been able to get the word out. People are able to know that homelessness is also an injustice, and that has been my area of expertise, homelessness, because it's not just a global pandemic, it's quite amplified for us here in the community. So if there's anything that I would want queer people to wake up to, it's to have a home. That would be my vision.
What do you miss from your life before 2016, before you got into this work, and one thing you can't do anymore?
If there's any one thing maybe that I can't do anymore would be living life in the closet. I think for the most part, I don't see myself really bending the rules. Here I am, for example, being able to put this on. I think before 2016, I definitely could not put this on. I would have to think twice about other people's opinion. That was me, but right now I know I have to choose me, and I also have to choose love, because without choosing that, the alternative is definitely hate. And I think if we continue to give people that particular choice, they'll always opt for it.
I noticed that from most of your answers, you even as you answer, there's a call, there's sort of like statement to action in everything you're saying, even in personal kind of conversations. And you say you do protection work, which happens to be 24 hours. How do you draw a balance between your personal and the work?
Yeah, as you just put it, it's a 24/7 kind of job. Sometimes I force myself to go into airplane mode, where I'm able to spare time for my mental well-being, spare time for just movies or just being able to go out. But of course, that also comes with the perks of what happens in between that time when I'm unreachable, what happens. And so I'm able to work with the team, and I'm able to balance the work in between and ensure that as I'm serving people, at least I'm also serving myself, because we can't do this work when we're all burnt out and worn out. So I think there's a work-life balance to it, and I try to specialize in movies or series or just going out, interacting and socializing, or even just touring places. Yeah.
Knowing what you know now from 8 years ago, what would you tell John Grace of 8 years ago before they got into this kind of work?
8 years ago, I think I would let them know patience is going to pain. And I think we're still in this patience pains phase. I'm sure we're going to get to some point where we pay off. We're just not yet sure of which kind of price we have to pay. It hopefully doesn't have to come to a David Kato kind of payment, because we do appreciate the people that came before us. And I think 8 years before, I would definitely let them know they're going to have to be more patient than we hopefully want them to be. We cannot be asking for gay marriage at this particular stage. We're just even asking for the right to breathe. So I think patience would be the description of what they have to prepare for. It takes a lot of patience. You're going to have to sit through the sad experiences and depressing stories of the stage where we shall get to being actually proud of who we are, because pride is still a protest until we get to the point where it's not.
Do you have any personal wins that we, anything that is personal that you celebrate so much, and how do you celebrate your personal wins?
I would say how I celebrate, I think I do tend to sing. It's more or less like my backup in case things ever went sideways. I feel being able to present stories through songs is one of my side talents, and I tend not to put it out there, but at least the ones who've had me could tell me that I could easily win a PAM award at least. So probably that's something of how I could express it. What it would be, I think, would be the empathy aspect of it. I think I celebrate myself being able to put myself in other people's shoes. Most cases, people look for connections and for people who can just feel whatever they're going through, and people tend to confuse empathy with sympathy, but it's not really particularly the case. If someone is feeling angry, I'm at least able to feel the anger with them. If it's pain, I'm able to feel the pain with them. If it's joy, I'm able to express just that. So it would be something that I would be celebrating, that ability. I don't know if it's a skill set, but I do think it's something that is unique to me.
There's a narrative out there that it's a common, is it, when people are fighting for culture and family values, that does it have, do you think there's a relationship between your gender, your sexuality and gender identity, and how you grow up, raised by a single mother?
The nurturing argument has always been left up to, again, the researchers. Some have argued, for example, that the genes aspect, simply because they've not found any kind of gay gene, they've also concluded there is no kind of heterosexual gene. So I think I would say the relationship particularly just does not exist, if I could say that. You're either born who you are, maybe it could take you some time to realize who you are, but at that point in time, when maybe you have not yet discovered yourself, I think you're still who you are. It could be a sexual minority, it could be your gender identity or your sexual orientation, but the myth out there that people are just not born gay, I think that's something that we have to continue dispelling. The evidence is quite contrary. People who have gone to mixed schools, for example, have still turned out to be homosexual. People who have gotten married have still turned out to be homosexual. So there's no kind of fixed formula. I think it's just, it is what it is. If you're born different, you're born different. And I think that's what more or less our message is. It's not a crime for us to exist as we are, just unique and diverse as a community.
I want you to break it down. Dispel the myth that trans-identifying individuals or lesbian identifying individuals are a product of absent father figures. Break down that narrative in your experience as John Grace, a trans-identifying individual.
In my experience, I grew up with girls, and masculine presenting people like me, of course, somehow, somewhere, someone will just jump to conclusions and say, you know, this they don't connect, you know. And the myth out there, of course, is if you're raised by, for example, both parents. Again, as I said, I grew up really with my mom, and maybe someone could say I should have maybe come out, for example, as a trans woman, but here I am. I'm a non-binary, and maybe I reflect aspects of both sides. And so again, because there is no fixed formula, that's where the myth is. The theory that somehow being raised by both parents, or even by single parents, or even no parents at all, somehow has anything to do with your sexual orientation and gender identity. I think it absolutely has nothing to do with it. Your education has nothing to do with it. Your blood type has nothing to do with it. It's something that is independent on its own. it is what it is without any kind of influence of external factors. Even if we were to go to prison, for example, the current sentences of 20 years, the theory is that we're still going to come out gay. And then what will happen? Sentenced to another 20 years. So I think the myth out there indeed really needs to be dispelled somehow, that raising children as they are, because it's indeed the current debate when it comes to transgender kids and how society presumes that one realizes their actual sexual orientation at the age of 18. But it's not really the case. You're able to tell at least who you like, who you're into. I definitely knew that I was into boys right from childhood, much as I was growing up with girls. So it's not some kind of assurance that, oh, okay, we've exposed them to girls, it means they'll like girls. Or there's no assurance that you've been around boys, you will also maybe particularly be liking boys. So you might end up bisexual, might end up being attracted to a different or even opposite gender for that particular matter. Because we've seen also people going to same-sex schools and they've again come out different. So the nurturing aspect, I think, is one of the highest myths that we have to really address. Somehow that children are just being groomed. It's not really particularly the case. If anything, if there's any kind of recruitment, I think it is us who are being consistently attempted to be recruited into heterosexuality, yet it's not something that is a choice at the end of the day.
I'd love to, you spoke about your work on the issue of homelessness around LGBTI people. How is it like, because LGBTI people must be born of parents it's upon them to provide family and shelter for your children. But one of the things that you work around and you've noted is the increasing rates of homelessness within the queer movement. How does that come about?
The root causes are quite many, but I could try to summarize them. We have an education root cause, for example. People get expelled from school, then they cannot go back home, and then they end up homeless because they've not been able to finish their school. And life for the uneducated, especially in our community where there's this whole misleading myth that somehow we are fully educated and we have access to different resources. I think the homelessness aspect, which is linked to education, is one of the root causes. We also have the employment aspect of it, where if someone is, again, being chased away from their own job because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, then they are unable to afford rent, and so they end up homeless in the end. The bigger causes, of course, are with the family and society, where people who are mostly dependent. For example, for my case, I was just lucky that by the time my parents rejected me, I was at least on some kind of level of independence where I was not particularly going to end up homeless. So even when they told me that you do not have a home currently, at least I was able to have a place to call home. But it's also a work in progress. I would also prefer to actually go back home sometime, but I do not have that particular place to call home. So family is definitely one of the biggest challenges, because the families that we grow up in, again, ensure that you're in some kind of dependency aspect or moment. And so once this particular issue comes out, it's quite a trending cycle. I just gave the example of the kind of statements that the parents tell their own children. We're still dealing with parents who are also willing to kill their own children simply because they're having a different sexual orientation or gender identity. So homelessness, for the most part, is definitely rooted, first of all, in the family, and then the community, where we've also seen people who are even willing to own property are being chased away from their own houses and being told to, just liquidate your property. We do not want homosexuals in this particular area. So it's quite a global challenge, first of all, on a global scale. We are aware of the challenges of housing and also the laws. For example, the current law, which criminalizes housing in all its aspects. The landlord is not allowed to give you a roof. The landlord themselves is also going to get arrested for even providing a roof for just sexual minorities. So I think it's work in progress. We need to definitely raise more awareness, but also raise the potential of our own community to afford housing on their own. I think that will be one of the steps that we shall be taking as a movement, because it's among the basic needs. Once you talk about the basic needs that we grew up learning from, shelter and housing is the primary one. If you do not have a roof over your head, then it's difficult to live a life.
Do you think that if you had more parental support, it will make navigating your identity any easier?
I've had a fair amount of parental support from my step-parent, I think my stepmom, She has made it clear, of course, this is not where she would prefer me to be, but just how she's navigated about this entire issue is something that I do not take for granted. Again, seeing the kind of stories that are out there of how parents have navigated them. But yes, I think if my parents had navigated this sexual orientation and gender identity issue for me, I would definitely be in a very much better place right now, because I do miss my mom. Each time that I get to celebrate Christmas without her, I, I get emotional. I wonder why this is a divisive issue, and I think in a parallel universe, I think yeah, I love my mom as she is, and she loves me as I am. So I think I'll be a better person than I currently am. Yeah.
Um, how would you love to be remembered?
Beyonce, I was here. I don't know if you've
I wanna leave.
until I die. I want to be that person that was just there for that one person that felt no one was there. I think each and every day that I feel I have a reason to give up, I get to be reminded that someone out there is just going to appreciate whatever I am doing. And in the lyrics again of Beyonce, I was here would be the best description. I think if someone plays the song, they'll have a better understanding of how I would want to be felt or appreciated in a way that I was here. My presence was felt.